some discipline.
You're listening to Hart Beat Radio.
Good evening to the great wrestling fans on the internet. Welcome back to Hart Beat Radio. This is May 7th, and we have a very special 2 hours this evening celebrating Owen Hart's 50th birthday. I've got some really great guests coming on this evening. We're going to be talking some stories about Owen and some perspectives and let people talk about their impressions of Owen as a worker, a friend, a humanitarian, or whatever else. But first of all, joining me this evening is my co-host for the evening. He's a longtime friend of ours from Regina, Saskatchewan. He was probably the greatest photographer in the history of wrestling. For Stampede Wrestling, he did a lot of emceeing and announcing. My friend, Mr. Bob Leonard, and joining Bob Leonard too will be one of our really true friends that we met way back in, I think it was in 1983. I know that Owen was about 18 at the time, and he befriended this man, and they were just tremendous friends when Owen was in the WWE, none other than our great friend Hillbilly Jim. And joining those two gentlemen, we'll be having one of our good friend of ours, John Kosman, who maybe some of the fans don't realize, but he was one of the top heels in Stampede Wrestling in the 90s, and went by the name of the Principal Richard Pound. He'll be joining us in this conversation. And, of course, we have our other distinguished co-host, none other than Bruce Hart, who put the whole show together and is responsible for this whole event. But without any further ado, I'd like to turn it over to welcome you four gentlemen, and welcome to Hart Beat Radio. In a little while, we'll be starting to bring some guests on. So good evening, folks, and welcome, Bob, and the Principal, and Bruce, and Hillbilly, and welcome to Hart Beat Radio. How are you guys tonight?
Thank you, Johnson.
Good evening, everybody. Hillbilly here.
Yeah, hi, Jim. I'd just like to thank all of you guys for taking from your busy schedules to join us tonight. It's really nice of you, and it's kind of a special day for us. Just Owen's 50th birthday, and a lot of reflecting, a lot of fond memories, and all that other. So, but it's nice to be able to spend a bit of time kind of reflecting and all of that with people that Owen was friends with and had the greatest respect and admiration for. So I'm really honored and happy that you guys chose to join us tonight.
Awfully glad to be here, Bruce. Always great to talk to you, of course, and to be on this show is a privilege. If I can
Bruce, I feel the same
here.
way. This is Hillbilly, man. As you know, Owen was a dear friend of mine and a real good buddy, and it's just really it's not out of my way at all tonight. There's no inconvenience at all to do this. As a matter of fact, I almost insisted when Bob called me, Bob Johnson, asked me about this, that I really wanted to come on here. So thank you guys for letting me be a part of this.
Our pleasure, Jim. Thank you.
And John Kosman, are you on the air? Welcome to Hart Beat Radio.
I'm here, Bob.
The Principal.
I'm here. Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here.
Yeah, you and Owen go back a long, long way. Tell us a little bit about your when you first met Owen and back in the day.
Well, I first met Owen when he was wrestling with Stampede, and they'd come to Regina at the auditorium every Tuesday night at that time. And when I broke into wrestling, I was trained by Archie the Stomper Goldie, another Stampede alumni. And fast forward to Owen was with the WWE at the time and working a show in Regina, and he came after the show, Owen, myself, and Bob Leonard were sitting over at Bob's house having a coffee after the matches, and Owen was saying that he thought of a good gimmick for me to possibly get into WWE would be a principal gimmick. And I owe everything to Owen for inventing that character, and I also have to thank Bruce for believing in me when Stampede relaunched in '99 and taking that principal character and really smoothing out the edges on it and developing the Richard Pound theme around the principal. And I just can't say thank you enough to Owen for being a friend and helping me out and developing that along with Bob Leonard, who came up with the music for it and the pictures for it, and it was just a real team effort. But Owen spearheaded that, and I can't thank him enough.
Yeah, that's nice of you to say, John. And Owen was actually a real mentor. You know, I think he a lot of times guys don't want to recommend anyone else because they're too insecure about their own status. So, but I remember Owen was after he got to the WWE, he was always endeavoring to get people like Chris Benoit and Brian Pillman and guys like that in there, you know. And he had a really big heart. He was always quite generous with his advice and pretty sincere about it too. You know, he spent a lot of time when he was wrestling, when he was up here. We were breaking in a bunch of young guys then, like that TJ, who's now Tyson Kidd in the WWE, and Davey Boy's son Harry, and Natalia, and Owen. You know, he was pretty busy at that time because he's on the road all the time with WWE, but he used to always show up down in the dungeon, and he was pretty generous with his time and his advice. You know, a lot of guys maybe just show up and put in a token appearance and that type of thing, you know. But Owen was quite sincere, and he'd actually evaluate these guys and give them some real good advice. And
I'm just Hillbilly. I'm just checking it out there, man. I was going to see who was going to go. I wanted to hear some stories before I waded in. Unless you want me to go now.
Yeah. I wanted to touch a bit later on some of the the more lighthearted, the Mischief, and some of the Owen.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of that. Believe me.
I thought I'd pay homage to Owen's, wrestling and his character before I got into some of the Mischief and the mayhem and some of that. But,
well, you know, Bruce, this is Hillbilly. You know, he was in Germany in my short little tenure in Calgary with Stampede. I think Owen was. Well, I believe he was in Europe. I think maybe Germany working. So I never got to meet him when I was, in Calgary. Brett was around there doing his thing, and we were doing the shows and whatnot. And then when I finally wound up in WWF or whatnot in WWE, he came along, right? So he came to me, and Bruce, I think I told you, and I think you guys can weigh in on this, I really saw a lot of Bruce Hart in Owen Hart. You could tell the brother connection was strong between you two, because he came right up to me and he said, Jim, he said, I understand. He said that Bruce had told me about you. We were just fast friends from that very beginning. You know, from the very first time he came in, and we started hanging out and talking and whatnot. And I got to say this, for a young guy, he was like an old soul. You know, he seemed very mature, and he seemed much older than his real years were. I guess it was because he had been around the business so long and was so well seasoned. And I noticed that was a distinct difference between him and other guys that came from other wrestling families. You know, this Owen seemed to be a whole lot more laid back, a lot more advanced, if you will, than a lot of the other younger guys, especially the ones his age. And I always found that to be quite remarkable about him, because he had, I guess he had pretty much been in the he had been in all the tough spots and the tight spots, if you will, and he seemed like he was just really well versed in how to handle himself. Not only guys, of course, in the ring, he was wonderful in there, but he knew how to handle himself, day to day with all the rigors and things that we have to go through when we travel all the time through airports and hotels and rental cars in different cities and different towns and different areas and all the things that we had to go through. So I always liked that about Owen a lot, and he kept a nice even keel for me, guys. I maybe you guys can talk about a little bit about him, the way he learned coming up, because obviously he was real confident in what he did, but he wasn't that kind of confident where he was just overbearing. He was just he was like laid back. And I always told Bruce, he seems a lot like you to me. Like he almost seemed like he could have been your son to me.
I'm flattered. I appreciate the. Owen. I spent a lot of time with Owen. Just as you know, Jim, we had the long road trips out here, about 2,000 miles a week, and a lot of the guys in the van, they'd be discussing anything but wrestling. They'd be discussing women and steroids and all kinds of crap. But Owen was always very, wanting to, even if he had a great match that night, he was always wanting to know if there's anything he could do better, if there's any insights or perspectives. And he was always trying to pick my brain or pick my dad's brain, or if my brother Keith's, or if Stu was in there, he'd always be wanting to know about what made a great worker, who were the greatest workers and why they were so great, and always wanting to know about a new move, or if he could come up with something that got him over more, and he was always spending a lot of time also kind of imparting his perspectives to guys like Benoit and Liger, Kichi Yamada as he was up here, but he was later wrestled in WCW as Jushin Liger, and there was a bunch of pretty much raw rookies up here at that time that I think even guys later like Chris Jericho and Lance Storm and those guys were kind of up here and down in the dungeon, and Owen was always sizing him up, and he was always very kind of intuitive, and he seemed to have a lot of. He had been watching it since he was a little kid, and he became a real student of it. Yet he wasn't sort of preachy or Mr. Know-It-All either. He was always pretty laid back, and he never would be just kind of criticizing or knocking guys. He was always sort of. Sometimes the guys should have been knocked or criticized because some of their whatever they were doing wasn't that good. But Owen had a way of kind of getting them to listen and learn, and I think he would have been, if he was still alive or whatever, he would have been a real asset to Vince or whoever, just as sort of a, one of those guys who gives advice and gives, he had pretty good handle of ring psychology, and he had a pretty good idea of how to kind of conduct himself out of the ring and all like that too. I saw so many of the other guys who unfortunately like Pillman and some of them, they seem to be caught up in some of the the drugs and some of the other stuff that kind of ultimately brought them down. And Owen seemed to be able to kind of avoid all that stuff, and he was sort of like a model citizen. Anyone in the WWE who was around him could attest to that.
Yeah, we kind of gravitated together. Bruce, he and I kind of gravitated towards each other because I wasn't into all that foolishness either. I was out there for a reason. Not out there for a season and just trying to, I wasn't out there to make my money then go give it away at night at the bars or the drug stand or whatever. And and Owen was like that too. Both of us, we took pride in kind of like being those kind of guys that we're out here to try to make it and advance ourselves. We weren't out here trying to just believe in our gimmick and our character and thinking that we were going to go on forever doing this. And he and I, Brucey's much like you in that respect. I could tell that he had sit at the learning tree there between you and your dad and all the guys up there, and got him thinking like that. Which I really appreciate that, because I got to tell you, in that time, fellas, in that WWF, and right before it turned to WWE, there weren't a lot of guys like that, because everybody was going pretty much damn bananas, because it was like, at that time, the business was taking off like it had never taken off before in the world, I guess, in America anyway, and North America, and it was like, everybody was like, they all thought they were rock stars, so.
Oh, yeah, I remember I did a Survivor Series one time back in, I think it was about like 1990 or something like that, in Hartford, Connecticut, and back in those days, they had it on the same day as American Thanksgiving, so all the boys used to come in early, like at noon or some damn thing, and I saw all these guys, including Neidhart and Davey Boy, and all the boys had stretch limos that they rented, and they all, showed up in these stretch limos, which were parked underground, and none of the fans even saw them coming in anyway, and I think Owen hitched a ride with some guy. Gave him a ride in an old Toyota or something, pulled up.
Yeah, that's right. That's what he did.
Owen didn't care. He told me he saved $200 and not having to rent a limo, and he didn't give a damn,
Yeah.
And
right.
I gave him like thumbs up. How come everyone else, can't fathom that, but yeah.
Now, to me, Bruce, that's champion mentality. I mean, to me, that's a champion. To me, that's the guy that he gets his hand raised every night when he figures out how to work it and try to do it like that. Not the guy that goes out here and does all this just for show and nobody really gives a damn anyway, right? But Owen got it. See, that's what I mean. Owen Hart got it. Same thing he did in the ring. He didn't waste no wasted energy in the ring, Bruce. He'd get right to it. He knew how to do it. He knew instead of going all the way around and coming to a point, he would just go directly to the point, he was very, very efficient, both in and out of the ring.
Yeah, that was one of the things that really impressed me about Owen early on in his career, is almost right from his first match, he could do all the high spots and stuff, but he had a sense of when to do it and in what context, unlike so many of the guys today, and you don't like to be knocking them because they're busting their asses and risking their necks and all, but Owen, he wouldn't waste a spot. He wouldn't just do a bunch of high spots for the sake of a pop. Everything was within the kind of the realm of building it up to a climax and all of that, and he had an innate sense of when to do something and when to slow it down and when to speed it up, and he had a really good way of integrating the crowd into it too, which is the hallmark of the really great workers, and
those second or third generation wrestlers, guys, they seem to have that pretty much instilled in them a lot better than guys have to figure it out on their own. And Owen was a direct indicator of that because, not only was he second generation, but he had been around it just all of his life, every day, year in and year out, from a little boy. And it's just one of those kind of things. He didn't have to unlearn anything like, guys that come in sometime, they get these bad habits and things, and it's hard to change a horse when he's in midstream, But Owen started out right. Which that was impressive to me,
He told me he learned as much from watching what guys were doing wrong as he did from what they're doing right. He said he saw all kinds of guys who, were on the verge of making it, who took the wrong turn, or guys whose attitudes was getting in the way, or guys who were, not quite getting it, and he was always applying it, and he never said much, he was always sort of, he had this philosophy, it's, better to have your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut than the other way around, and I remember when we had other guys like the Funks and Harley and guys like that would come up, the world champions, and Owen was, even though he's a little kid back then, like, 6, 7 years old, he would somehow or other coerce me or my dad to let him come up to Edmonton, and he would just listen. He wouldn't say a word. And my dad would be talking to Dory or Terry or Harley or guys like that, and Owen was just absorbing all the stuff, and by the time he finally started, he was like an old soul. He'd heard all the stories and the ins and outs of the ring psychology and the the good, the bad, and the ugly, and he, it really enhanced his advance in the business.
Yeah, he had all that experience, Bruce, so he didn't have to do the 25 years to get it. That's what I thought about him. Yeah. I mean, that's the best way I can put it. He didn't have to go through all those god-awful mistakes and horrible things. He was smart enough to say, look, if this guy does this, this is what's going to happen. If I do this, this is going to happen to me. What makes me think I can do the same thing he does and not get the same results? So he was smart in that respect. When you get someone like that, man, you got you something that's really, really unusual, because most people, you know how they are, they'll cut their leg off trying to save their tail,
Oh yeah, and he unfortunately saw firsthand it was almost kind of sad to see so many of them were kind of crashing and burning right around him, and he some of them, like poor Pillman and some of them, he was trying to turn them around, or he felt bad when he wasn't able to, though. It's kind of he had a big heart in that way too, though.
Guys, it might be good for all of us to think and maybe do a show some night on what it takes to make a guy not go down that road when if all of them are the same or close to being the same as athletes going into the wrestling business. What makes guys make that turn and head towards the drugs, the drinking, the out of control part, and then there's a few guys that just don't go that route. You know what I'm saying? And it's amazing why otherwise smart, intelligent men.
Yeah, those are the ones that frustrate you the most, because I know some of the ones that came out of Calgary.
Brian Pillman was real frustrating to me, Bruce, because I knew you knew him real well, and I adored Brian Pillman. A wonderful fella, just a great guy, just a joy every time to be around. But he had this thing about him where he liked those pills and things, and those sleeping pills and things, and and this drinking and doing that stuff. I mean, how many times, guys, it's a broken record has this been done? And and I say, why don't these gentlemen learn from this?
Sorry, I got gonna let you guys know. I got. Ross Hart is on the air too, listening in, and Ross is Owen's brother and Bruce's brother, and welcome to Hart Beat Radio, Ross Hart. Are you on the air?
Well, thanks. Yeah, I am, and thanks for having me on, and it's great to be in the company of Jim and Bruce, and it's wonderful hearing these stories you have of Owen. Owen sometimes just doesn't get enough credit for being a family man and a true professional in the sense that he did his business in the ring. He worked very hard. He always gave 100% in every match, and once it was over, he would head back to his hotel and get ready to work out the next day and make his flight to the next show, but he never overindulged. He just avoided the temptations that so many other wrestlers did with the partying and the steroid use, the painkillers, and and that's why I think he had such a great career without a lot of injuries. And you never heard about Owen having to take time off because he had a lot of injuries, because he was very careful with what he did in the ring. He wasn't reckless. He didn't do a lot of ridiculous high spots. What he did always meant something. He was as acrobatic, as technical a wrestler as anyone in the industry. I don't think anyone would deny that, but he was always very careful with what he did, and he never abused his body or put anyone else at risk, and that's why he had so much longevity, and he always just looked forward to getting home, to be with his girlfriend at the time, or later his wife Martha, or later his kids, and he always just seemed very well grounded. And as you and Jim indicated, Bruce, he was always just very practical, always careful with his money, and never foolishly wasted it on first class trips or partying or buying
at the same time,
he
wasn't a cheapskate, though,
No,
I used to hear some of them. Two guys they always used to make fun of was Owen and Randy Savage, like they were supposedly tight with the dollar. But Owen went out of his way to save a buck, but he was always pretty generous if he was with friends or whatever. He wasn't like...
I was right there with him, brother, and let me tell you, he never did deny himself anything that he needed. He ate well. He took care of himself well. I mean, he didn't just do things. He didn't sleep in a tent or nothing like that. I mean, but let me tell you, he was one of those guys that was very measured in the things that he did, and I appreciate that because I was like that as well too. That's why I say he was like an old soul. And listen, he had everything he wanted. He had all the food he wanted. He had all the things that it takes for a pro athlete to make it on the road like that. It's just that he didn't waste. He was not a wasteful man. He was not a kind of guy that was just very frivolous and just threw his money around. He didn't go out and do the normal things that gets everybody trapped, Ross. He wasn't a bar guy. He wasn't the kind of guy that had to show off like that. It's like you said, the brother would go back to the hotel. We'd get our food, whatever we were going to do. We always had our funs and laughs. He'd get up the next morning, he'd hit the gym. Before we made the trip, or if we had to catch a plane, we'd go to the airport, catch a plane, and we'd get to the hotel wherever we were. We would go to the gym, get us something to eat, whatever, and chill out a little bit, get ready for the show. And it's like a continual motion thing. And a lot of these guys they just couldn't seem to get that. That's why it was so cool for me to see Owen Hart come in there, a young guy who actually got it. He got it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think his experience wrestling with Stampede for a couple of years, and he was very much molded and shaped, especially by Bruce. Bruce really helped start Owen out. Gave him his first break. When Owen broke in, I think back in '86, and Bruce, you imparted so much to him and taught him a lot about psychology and how to sell and how to make comebacks. And I think he always was indebted to you for helping start him out, and you obviously paired him with some really good workers that were experienced and could lead him. And but he was so well grounded, working on the road here and having to stay in hotels every night and budget for his food and clothes and whatever you have to spend money while you're on the road. And he was very well grounded, like a lot of other guys who didn't stay in a territory long enough and then didn't know how to handle or control their money once they went to WWE or WCW or even Japan, where they made big money. And Owen was just very practical and just very well-rounded in what he did in the ring, and I think he owed a lot of that to you, Bruce, because you're such a good role model and older brother to him, and very unselfish. And
yes.
You're as happy as anyone, Bruce, that he got over. And I think Owen always appreciated you for that, Bruce.
Ross is right. Owen came to me, and I could tell. I knew I was right. I said, he seems so much like Bruce. Ross, it used to blow my mind. I mean, he was so much like Bruce. Of all the Harts, he was more like Bruce than anybody. Of course, I could see all of y'all's resemblances and stuff with Helen and Stu, but it was like he was like Bruce's. It was like he was Bruce's kid or something.
Hi, this is Bob. I'm going to break in here. I've got a guest coming on for a few minutes, and I'd like to introduce him here. He's probably one of the biggest heroes that Owen Hart ever had, a tremendous influence on him. He's been a guest of our show many times and a great friend, none other than the legendary Terry Funk. Terry, welcome to Hart Beat Radio, and welcome to Owen Hart's 50th.
Thank you very much. Well, dadgummit, he used to drive me nuts all the time, all over the entire country. He was the craziest Hart of all. Absolutely, he was. Yeah, he
I
thought
think
all of that
learned
stuff was funny.
I think he learned it all from you and Harley, Terry.
Yeah, I learned. I think he might have. It's how old would he be right now?
Today would have been his 50th birthday.
Yeah, that would be. I'm going to tell you something right now. That was a horrid thing to have happen, and I know that you guys know that. But I'll tell you what, it just, I especially to a wrestling family, because it's the wrestling families are always, they just seem to be so close knit, and especially the ones that came from the era that my father and your father came from. And I just love not only your father and your mother, but the whole dadgum family, and the Funks and the Harts were close.
Very close.
And always will be close too.
Yeah, I remember Owen joined us when we used to drive down to Amarillo in the summer, and Owen came down there and was smitten. You know, he was. I think that was one of the last things that made him decide he needed to go into wrestling. He was sort of in awe. He had seen you and Dory and all of that, and it kind of was like the clincher, you know. But I know he had the ultimate respect for you guys and Harley. You know, you guys were sort of like his, ultimate heroes. You know, so and he had always tried to model himself after you guys, and I think he did a pretty good job of it.
Well, I think all of the Harts have just been a wonderful credit to the business, you know, and I really mean that. And I'm sure that there will be some more wrestling families in it, and some that will go ahead and be long timers, you know, and be around a long time. But it seems as though there's fewer and fewer families that are involved with the business.
Yeah,
you know.
I know you and Dory, you guys started a whole bunch of, a number of legendary wrestling family types right down in Amarillo there, you know.
Absolutely.
Like the Romero.
Absolutely.
And
Ted DiBiase and
Tully Blanchard and
Tully Blanchard. The Romeros, just
Bruce or Brody.
Yeah, Brody and Murdoch
Scott
and Hansen.
Casey. Murdoch.
Yeah, and
the American
all those guys,
Dream, Dusty Rhodes. The American Dream.
Almost all those guys were not only great workers, but they were all people of character too. They all had great principles and moral values, and were good people, you know. So, and I think that was one of the things that your dad and my dad tried to instill in these wrestlers, you know. And for the most part, I think they succeeded.
Terry, I know.
I think it's.
I was going to say, Terry, I know Owen really enjoyed spending a lot of time on the road with you and Mick Foley when you were in WWE. And did you have any stories or anything you could share about Owen's pranks that he pulled? But I know he spent quite a bit of time with you guys
just
on the road.
Just driving me nuts. Oh, yeah, he just drove me nuts, that's all. He just constantly went ahead and was jacking with me and my bag and everything else. It drove me crazy.
Well, Owen pulled a lot of jokes, but, you know, nothing was ever malicious or damaged guys, gear, or he would never X-lax somebody. You know, I mean, there was some pretty mean pranksters. You know, Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy. They pulled some pretty mean-spirited ribs on a lot of guys, but
totally different.
But Owen, what he did, you know, he kind of knew at the end that it was him, and you had a good laugh, and he could always catch it just as soon as you thought you were on to Owen. do something else to you, but it never hurt anyone,
Yeah, that's right.
And
nothing malicious. Nothing malicious.
No, it was comic relief to kind of get you through the long road trips and the agonizing schedule, that you guys had to work, where you're wrestling 7 days a week, and that little infusion of humor is what I think helped a lot of guys survive and tolerate all the hardships of the business.
Whenever we were up there in Calgary and stuff, and people, the road was that was your school. When you were on the road and together in those cars, and you had guys that could talk to you and that were so knowledgeable in the business itself, and they would lecture for hours and hours and hours, and that was the wonderful part about it. And if they would
that's
watch
one of the things
if you asked them to watch your match, they would, and then they would critique it for the 2-hour trip on the way home.
But I've got to tell you, Bruce and the guys, a Terry Funk story that me and Owen saw one time. Terry has always got them cowboy boots on and those jeans all rolled up in his boots, and he gets to the airplane, and he puts his bag on the floor, and he's dragging it like it's so heavy, right? He looks, and Terry would purposely look like every step he was going to take would be his last step. So he's pulling this bag, dragging this bag behind him down between the aisle. One of the flight attendant ladies thinks it must be real heavy, right? Guys, I promise you. She bends over, puts her hands on the bag and pushes it. Well, it's not got nothing in it. She falls flat on her face. Terry Funk turns around and he says, "If I needed your help, I would have asked for it." Me and Owen went crazy. And Terry, it was just a nut. So, Terry, listen, you drove everybody nuts your damn self. He ain't the only one that drove you nuts. You drove a lot of us nuts.
Everybody's here?
How about the rodeos? You still got them every summer?
Yeah, you were up here for I think my dad pulled out all the stops that one Stampede parade for you, Terry, with the...
Oh, he certainly did.
I've got Bob here. I've got another friend of Terry's is just calling in here, and he was a tremendous influence on Owen and quite a friend, Bobby Horn, a.k.a. Sir Mo. Sir Mo, welcome to Hart Beat Radio. We're talking to Terry Funk and Bruce and Hillbilly Jim and some guys, and Bruce and Ross Hart. Welcome to Hart Beat Radio.
Thank you, sir.
How are you guys?
How's everyone doing?
Hey, Mo.
Doing good.
Wonderful, Mo.
Doing great, Mo. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure.
We'd be setting place maybe at a Howard Johnson's having some lunch, right? And some of the fans would come over there and want autographs, right? Well, you had to watch Owen. This is Hillbilly. Let me tell you what he would do. There'd be a couple of guys standing around, maybe a girl or two. He would grab your autograph that you just signed for the guy, and he'd write over top of it, "I love you," while I wrote Hillbilly Jim on it. And the guy would give me the funny-ass look, and I'm going, "Jesus, Owen, would you stop it? Could you give it a break?" And he couldn't. He could not stop ribbing. Couldn't help it.
The funniest story I'd heard was that at one of the TV tapings, and they had all these goats for some skit. I don't know if you remember that, Jim, but Owen herded all these goats that were supposed to be used for the Godwins into Vince's office.
Oh yeah, Vince was madder than hell. Yeah.
And Vince came back, to his office, and he finds all these goats in there, and the door was closed, so they couldn't get out, and I think some pigs and some other barnyard animals, and Owen had herded them all into there, and I said, well, it couldn't have happened to a better guy.
Oh yeah, Owen is nowhere to be seen. He's never around where you could point a finger at him, but we knew he did it. I mean, he had him all over, right? Really.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, he was never at the scene of the crime.
And he was the only one that could get away with that stuff.
Yeah, he could pull it off, couldn't he, brother?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember there was this guy named Reggie Parks. Terry probably knows him, a pretty nice guy. He was pretty low-key guy, and he had started up here in Calgary way back in the 50s, and like a lot of the other guys who had broken in, he had been through the dungeon and got stretched a few times, but anyway, about 40 years afterwards, Owen, I guess Reggie Parks was at one of the WrestleManias, I think, down in Los Angeles or something like that, and Owen did a pretty good impersonation of Reggie Parks, and he calls Stu up on the phone in the hotel, and he's kind of hemming and hawing and stammering as Reggie Parks, and my dad was getting more and more frustrated, and he finally said, what are you getting at, Reg? And Owen, as Reggie, says, you took advantage of me in the dungeon back in 1955 or something like that. I don't think you can do it again. And Stu's getting all worked up and saying, if you think you can handle me, Reg, take your best hold. About half an hour later, down in the lobby, and Reggie Parks, who hasn't seen Stu for 30 years, comes up to embrace him, and Stu says, take your best hold, Reg, if you
Oh, my God.
And Reggie wasn't sure what Stu was. Stu was almost wanting to go for it in the lobby of this big hotel, and that was sort of classic Owen, and I guess Brett and a few of them were laughing their asses off because Reggie was a pretty mild-mannered guy, and Stu was, grab your best hold, Reggie.
Well, and he done something similar to Iron Sheik. He called Iron Sheik in his hotel room, and he called him as a reporter who wanted to do a story on Sheik, and anyway, it started off very well where he was putting Sheik over, and then he completely turned on Sheik and said he was a phony and a fraud and had never wrestled amateur in his life, and he could kick his ass, and the Sheik went absolutely nuts. And anyway, Owen, this reporter, said, if you want to kick my ass, then meet me down in the lobby of the hotel right now. So then Sheik came down in his underwear, to the lobby of the hotel about 5 in the morning, looking for this reporter he was going to kill, and he had no idea, that it was Owen all along who had called him. And I think he did something like that with Sherry Martel as well as a reporter, and putting Sherry over at first, saying she was a great women's champion. Then all of a sudden, conversation just soured, and he said, "But I don't think girls should be in the ring. I don't like what they're doing, and it's very unbecoming and unsexy." And Sherry just went absolutely nuts. She wanted to kill this reporter, whoever it was. And Owen could completely disguise his voice, and none of these wrestlers or my dad had any idea that it was him. He was just a master of disguises and deception.
Wow, such an amazing individual.
Did he ever pull any of those ribs on you, Bobby, or on Mabel?
Man, you know what? I don't know if it was just a lack of not knowing me well enough to do that or whatever, but I would sit and watch him do things to other people, and I would think, what? I'm always, when Owen around, I'm going to be near Owen at all times. Yeah, when you see him come lurking through the dressing room, and he'll come lurking through the dressing room at a time when the rest of the family is in a private dressing room at the other end of the hallway, Owen coming to the main dressing room, he's up to something because, hey, he didn't belong there.
Yeah, that's right.
He don't belong in this dressing room, and every time he'd walk through the dressing room and he'd be like that, I'd pick my bags up off the floor and I'd put them in my lap and I'd hold on to my bag until he left the dressing room.
I know he'd do stuff to Big Mabel, but Mabel was the sweetest guy in the world. I mean, he wouldn't hurt a flake. But now Owen would still mess with him, but he liked Mabel, so he only did it a time or two. And how a rib is, guys. A rib is no good unless if the other guy don't put it over, it don't really matter.
Right.
In other words, if you don't get upset, if you don't get a reaction, there ain't no reason to keep ribbing the guy. So Owen would move on. He'd move on to somebody else. There was plenty of them he could rib,
There's another. I had heard a story. Owen had told me that he was riding with Ultimate Warrior and Cantatira. Ultimate Warrior was driving his own rent-a-cars, which unfortunately he usually smashed up or broke down because he was unfortunately a very reckless driver. And eventually, I think they got a chauffeur to to drive him around. But this was, I think, in his first year that he was in WWF. And Owen always enjoyed riding with him because, you know, he knew it was going to be interesting. There'd be some high spots, and they'd be on the interstate or freeway trying to find the arena, and they had no GPS or anything back then, and Ultimate Warrior would be driving and cutting people off and not signaling, because very erratic driver. But anyway, Owen had talked Ken Patera into riding up in the front with Ultimate, and Ken wasn't feeling very well. He had a bad sleep, I think, the night before, and he already had a migraine headache. But anyway, Owen convinced Ken to ride up with Ultimate, and Owen warned Ken, he says, you got to watch him. He's a very erratic driver. Make sure he doesn't miss his turns or anything. And anyway, they're riding. I think this was somewhere in Texas or something. But anyway, and as usual, Ultimate was cutting people off and missing his turnoffs, and then cars were honking, and Ken Patera was going absolutely nuts. You know, he says, for fuck's sakes, Warrior, you're going to get us all fucking killed in the back seat. Owen is just for the entire ride. You know, he couldn't stop laughing, and Ken Patera, you know, he was so weary and exhausted by the time he got out of the car, he could hardly wrestle that night. You know, said never again will I fucking ride with that guy. And Owen was hysterically laughing, and Owen had set it all up. You know.
Oh, hey, I'll tell you one. Since you're into this, is Terry still on the line? Terry Funk.
Yes, I am.
Terry, you got to hear this.
And I wanted to explain to people. All right, go ahead.
Hey, we were in Hershey one night, right? I got done a little early. Owen did too, and I wanted to go back to, I guess it was Newark. He says, Hillbilly, you want to ride back with me? I got a couple of girls that brought me over, right? Now he had these girls that would pick him up all the time and just schlep him around wherever he wanted to go. No problem, right? So hey, we get with these girls, and we're heading back, Terry, to Newark. So we're leaving around Hershey and Harrisburg, whatever. These two girls are up front talking. Me and Owen are back talking, and these girls are trying to get what they're doing. I overheard them. They're trying to get a little money together so they can buy some gas. They don't even have enough fucking money to get us no gas, right? So I tell the girls, I say, hey girls, if you pull over to get some gas, I say, I'll get us some gas. Don't worry about it. They looked at me like I was crazy, right? Well, I give them like $20 to get some gas. Owen pulled me to the side, Terry. He says, Hillbilly, what are you doing? I said, I want to make sure we got, I thank you for giving me a ride back. I get back early and everything to the hotel, and I want to get the girls some gas. I don't want us to run out of gas. The girls ain't got no money. He said, Hillbilly, don't do that. You'll taint the mark. In other words, you got to make them pay for everything. I said, look, brother, I appreciate the ride, but I can't let the poor girls. The girls were they were having a breakdown because they didn't have enough money, and they were afraid to ask Owen for it. But I laughed my butt off. I said, he was great. Don't help him. You'll taint the mark. Wow.
I remember my brother Owen my dad had this old heel. I think he used to work for Terry and Dory, a guy named Cyclone Negro, and I remember Owen called him up as Stu. Owen did the Stu impersonation and sent him out to some about 40, 50 miles out of town in the middle of winter on a Saturday morning to sign autographs at a car lot or something like that. And I remember Cyclone called Stu up from Didsbury or wherever the hell it was, and speaking in broken English, and is demanding to know where this car lot that he's supposed to be, I think it was a pancake breakfast car lot or some damn thing, he's supposed to be signing autographs, which was kind of funny because he's a heel anyway, and nobody would have wanted his autograph anyway. But and he's demanding to know where this car lot is, and Stu is saying, I don't know a damn thing about it. Yeah. and Cyclone starts getting heated up and saying, you sent me out here, amigo. And Stu saying, I don't believe I did. And Cyclone started getting heated up and saying, come on, you'll send me out here. And it's about 40 below in the middle of nowhere. And Stu says, go fuck yourself. Stu saw Cyclone later in the dressing room. It was like Cyclone is demanding to know why he was sent out here at 7 in the morning in a 40 below weather and all like this. And it was classic Owen type.
Oh, man.
Owen was just sitting there.
Hey, I was with him one night in SummerSlam. We did a SummerSlam somewhere. This was good. And I was sitting right in the room when he did it. He called, y'all know Howard Finkel. Terry, you know Howard, Hall of Fame announcer.
Yes, I know.
He called up Howard Finkel. And he posed like he was one of Vince's main cronies. They had a guy named Basil DeVito. He was in the office and he would fire you.
Everything okay?
He called up and he called Howard Finkel, my buddy Howard Finkel, and told him that Vince had told him to get rid of him immediately, that he did an awful job that night on the pay-per-view, and they can't have it, and they're going to take his contract, and they want him to get his stuff and go home now. And Howard started crying on the phone. Howard broke down and started crying. And he called Basil at the office and called Basil back, and Basil said, he said, I just talked to you. He said, what are you talking about? I haven't called you. I don't know what you're talking about. It was Owen.
Oh my God.
Let me tell you something. It was better to do like Mo said, man. Hey, stay on his good side because you don't want him on you, man, because it's awful. Terry, you'd get Terry all the time. It was easy to get Terry. Terry was a sitting duck for him, Terry didn't have nowhere to go. Terry didn't have nowhere to go.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump off here because I'm going to be very honest with you, as I've got pneumonia and just feeling pretty bad and doing the best if I can, trying to get over it.
Well,
all right, you guys take care now.
All the best.
All right, Terry.
Soon, Terry.
Good night, buddy.
Terry, and thank you for coming on
all right,
tonight.
You guys take care.
Okay.
All the best, Terry.
Bye.
Thank you.
There's not many like that around anymore. You know that, like Terry Funk.
No one of a kind.
Listen, I've got a couple calling in here right now, guys. They wanted to talk to Terry, but I've got a couple of guys going to join us in a second here. We have a young guy who started with us back in the 80s. He was trained by Boris Malenko. He was part of what we call the Black Harts. He actually won a Meltzer Award for being the most dynamic wrestler in 1988. Welcome to Hart Beat Radio, Tom Nash. Are you on the air?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Hi, Tom. Long time since I've heard from you. I hope you're doing well, and thanks for joining us tonight.
I'm doing well, Bruce. I think last time me and you saw each other, remember we were at Neidhart's house, and you were going to book shows for Jim, and we did a couple things up there in Tampa when he was living up there. Remember that?
Yeah, before he was incarcerated or got tracked or whatever.
Well, I remember you were busting his balls pretty good, and your sister was really tearing him up. And by the end of the night, we were calling him poor Jim, and thought he was going to probably sleep outside that night.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's great to hear from you, Tom. I'm glad to hear you're doing well.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to hear from you guys.
In case some of the listeners don't know, you did the tag team up here with the guy who later on became Gangrel, Dave Heath, and you guys did an awesome job for us. And
you really guided us and taught us the gimmick well. And I remember Ross used to always touch on different things. So you guys really, got us going in the beginning in the right direction. So we were pretty much blessed to have you on our side.
Yeah, I think 2 out of 3 wasn't bad because your manager was the infamous Ben Ryan was less than stellar, but aside from that, you and Dave did a hell of a job.
Yeah, I think the first night Wakamatsu was first, and he wouldn't speak English, and he was a better manager.
Yeah, he was more articulate.
I'm going to ask you, Tom. We're going to be bringing Billy Silverman on in a couple of minutes, but I wanted to ask you, Tom, what advice Owen gave you when you knew him back in the day? I could tell you two things real quick. I know you're busy and you got a lot to go on here. First off, I was really honored in the beginning because some guys didn't know, but the Hart family took me in, was really nice, and Ross and Helen and Stu were great, and Bruce used to bring me over for Sunday dinner because I was living by myself at the hotel. So no one really knew, and Owen left the WWE and started working for Stu again. Had a little feud going on with Dave Sheldon.
So one of the nights, him and his wife came over on a Sunday night, and I'm eating dinner there, and Owen was just really nice to me and everything else, and Davey Boy was teasing him and stuff and saying stuff, and they're both giving me kind of a hard time. They're like, listen, if anybody finds out that you eat dinner over here, you're going to have heat with everybody, so don't say nothing to nobody, you know? So about 2 nights later, we're wrestling in the local place, and and for one night, you know, all the heels and babyface in one dressing room. Owen says, you know, don't say nothing, they will be pissed, you know, so don't ever bring it up. So I don't, you know? So all of a sudden, at the end of the night, we're all sitting there, and I was like, so you coming over to dinner again next Sunday? I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, you're at Stu's, you know, you're eating everything. You know, there wasn't even enough food for the whole family, you know, but I guess they want you to come back again. And I'll tell you, he was right. Everyone was pissed. But on the other hand, this is really, you know, later on, we worked for Tri-State, and we were the champs there, and he came in a couple times there up in Jersey, and he would wrestle against some of the Japanese boys there. He'd come in with Tokyo Joe, and it was always great to see him. But I was really honored a couple times. Most people don't know this, but when I worked in Calgary, one of the first times when he'd drive the local shows, him and his wife, you know. And one of the first nights after, of course, I met him at the Hart House. He comes up to the heel dressing room, and he says, I want to talk to Tom Nash. So I'm like, okay. He goes, take off your mask and come out there. So I come outside. He goes, I'm going to be wrestling next, and I really, you know, don't trust all the boys. Could you stand outside with my wife so no one messes with her? And the next 3 or 4 nights when we wrestled locally, he would have me do that. And that's pretty honorable that someone trusts you, you know, and feels that way. So I was pretty honored, you know, by someone I just met a couple of times already, and he felt that I was good enough because he was very protective, you know, and I was always pretty honored by that.
Yeah, that speaks volumes of his respect for you, Tom, because he was pretty discriminating. He seemed to have an uncanny perception of who was decent and who was kind of slime balls in the business. So,
yeah, I'll tell you too. You know, real quick, him and Neidhart, no matter where I saw him, you know, we work in Tri-State. Owen was like, but I wish Bruce was booking here, man. He could really make this happen. And Neidhart, I worked a couple of shows in the beginning for him, and he says Bruce is going to be coming in next month, and he'll be booking these shows. And man, I really can't wait till Bruce gets here. You know, no one books like Bruce. So they were both, you know, pretty much helped a lot by you, and you guided them in the beginning, and that helps a lot too. And it's an honor for you too, you know, to know that they felt that way even when they're in another territory. And it was, you know, I got to tell you, Mike Shaw too was the same damn thing. You know, I was working up in Tri-State. We're doing this stupid convention, and Mike Shaw and Owen were both there, and they're both saying, man, it'd be great, you know, if Stampede was again, and we were working with Bruce, you know. And so you know, it all came around where we all, you know, there was a certain group, and you know, Ross was always helpful with telling you this and that and everything else. And the family treated me so darn well, you know, I could never say anything but great things. You know, and as far as ribbing, the only time he ever ribbed me was that one time, you know, about eating dinner. And then there's one other time he didn't really rib me, but Dave Sheldon and Davey Boy Smith were going to have a strap match, you know. But it was going to be where they used belts, you know, that you'd wear. Davey Boy didn't have a belt, but Dave Sheldon did. So I guess he was looking everywhere for it. So Owen came over to the heel side and says, anyone wearing belts? And a bunch of us were. He goes, give me all your belts. He put all our belts in a bag and hit them. And 2 minutes later, Davey comes over and goes, anyone got a belt? So he had to go out to a belt match without a belt. Now, even funnier, I don't think anyone's ever got our belts back, either from Owen. But, you know, I was blessed to be up to you guys. Gave me a big break, and, you know, I've talked to Ross a couple of times on Facebook and Bob Johnson as well. And I really appreciate you guys and your family and the friendship. You know, it's just great people. And every time I've ever run into any of you, it's always been a blessing, you know. So God bless your brother. It's a shame, you know, but, hey, he's you know, it's harder for us. You know, we're still here thinking about him, but God bless, and it's great talking to you, and thanks for inviting me on your show. I really appreciate it.
How is Dave Heath doing these days?
I haven't talked to him in a long time. I haven't talked to anyone really much in wrestling. I was living in Central America for like the last 10 years, and then I came back home about 2 or 3 years ago. It's a long story, but then because my dad passed away, I came back to kind of take care of my mom, you know. So yeah, I live in Florida. I live close to Fort Lauderdale.
Well, you and Dave were a cutting edge tag team. You know, you had a great gimmick, and you know, you kind of got your feet wet in Calgary here, where you had the international tag team title, and then you had a really good run in All Japan and in Florida as well. But I think
with the break or two, you guys could have easily become a big thing in WWE or WWF as it was at that time, or WCW. You know, you guys were just starting to really click, you know. And
we worked in WCW, and we actually quit when Neidhart quit too and stuff. Did you know that? You know, the pay back then was just so bad, you know, and you'd have to pay for your own travel, your own hotel, and everything else, and you have to do different stuff. And the shows, you know, it was like the early '90s. They weren't drawing very well, and it was just like, this ain't worth it. You know, I mean, we sit there and go to All Japan, and you get treated like first class and everything else, and you come back here, and it was just. You know, we used to joke. We used to say, if you lose your driver's license in WCW, you're out of a job because you had to do so much damn driving. You know.
Yeah. Well, that's unfortunate, but.
I've just pretty much been working as an electrician and kind of got out of touch. You know, about the time when I was working for WCW, I'll tell you, kind of, it would seem like Owen Hart was booking the flights there, but he wasn't. We're working for them in Chicago, right, for WCW, for Ted Turner. So we're waiting for our airplane tickets to fly to Canada. So we call them up and say, you know, we're supposed to be in Canada tomorrow wrestling. And they're like, okay, so what's the problem? I'm like, well, you didn't send us our tickets. And she goes, yes, we did. We sent it to your house in Pompano Beach. I'm like, Pompano Beach, I'm in Chicago. She goes, what are you doing there? I go, I'm wrestling for you guys. How am I going to, I'm not going to drive all the way to Pompano Beach for 2 days and then fly up to Canada. I got to be there tomorrow. And like, after stuff like that, it just got to be too much. You know, it's like, it's just a joke and there's no money, and then your plane tickets ain't there, and then they're telling you they're going to fine you if you're not at the show. Well, you didn't get your plane tickets. Oh, yes, you did. We sent them to Pompano Beach. I'm like, well, I'm in Chicago. And you know, it was just so crazy, and nothing made any sense. I was like, I'm just over this, you know. And after a while, it just, you know, got to be a thing. And right after that, Memphis did give us a tryout for WWE, but Memphis, oh my God, it was, you know, Jerry Lawler is a great booker, and we had some fun there, but it was also a difficult place, you know.
Yeah.
Tom, this is Hillbilly Jim.
Just going to say,
I'm loving what you're saying there, Tommy. You know, and I had 2 comments here, man. You know, I did that whole Memphis thing, too, and this whole thing you talk about going around. I told Bruce this. Once all these territories that I had been to were done, and I got a chance to go to that WWF, the way they treated me and as much money as I made and as good as it was, there was no way, brother, I was going to go back and go anywhere else, because it would have been like going from riding in a limousine to riding in a Volkswagen. You know, because they took care of everything. So, you know what, brother, I just stayed where I was and let the chips fall where they may. That's the way I want to do it. But the other thing I wanted to say to you, and I want to get your comment on this, all this guy we're talking, Terry Funk and you and me and all of us, we all have this thing in common, this whole Stampede Wrestling Calgary thing in common. You know what I say it's like? It's kind of like being in the dysfunctional Navy SEALs. We were all in there together. What do you think, Tom? Talk about that.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty much, you know, and I guess the head trainer would have been Stu, you know.
Oh yeah, you see you bastard. He told me, he said, "Come on down here, you're a big bastard, aren't you?" Let me look at that. My brother Bruce had already told me what to do. I just started talking to him about Luther Lindsay, and brother, he settled down like a little sheep or something. All he wanted to do was talk about Luther Lindsay, and he left me the hell alone, brother. It was great.
One time he wanted to show me how to punch, and I accidentally outsmarted him. I said, well, if you show me how to punch and you do it on me, how am I going to see how to do it? Now, I knew where this was going, you know. So I go, and he said, Ross, come here. And all of a sudden, Bruce is coming downstairs. Yeah. Ross is running upstairs with a bloody nose, and Bruce goes, what the hell happened?
Oh, yeah.
I said, he was showing me how to punch. And I love Ross, and I didn't do it on purpose, but that happened.
No. I think I remember that.
You're going to be a dysfunctional Navy SEAL. You've been to Calgary. You've been to Stampede Wrestling. Yeah, baby. That's us.
I'd like to welcome Billy Silberman, who is a WCW and WWE referee back in the day, and I think you know Tom. And
thank you. It's an honor to be on just to talk about Owen. I don't know, real quick, I'll just jump into this. I don't know if Tom Nash remembers this, but we actually worked together very briefly for a promoter named Herb Abrams.
Yeah, we were his. Did you work on the pay-per-view, or did you work?
I'm on my face is on the box cover of his pay-per-view. But,
Herb was a character.
Herb. He was a character. That's for sure. He was a character.
I just heard of him. I've never known him. He sounded
he
like
was
the
a character.
Sterling of the wrestling set or something like that.
Herb was clueless, and if someone told him something that he respected, it was the greatest thing. If someone told him that could tell him anything, and it could go either way. We did this match where we had the rest of this team, and it was Bam Bam Bigelow's nephew, and the kid didn't want to do any jobs, and he wasn't half as big as Bam Bam Bigelow, but he didn't want to do any jobs or anything. So for the finish, we were going to throw him outside the ring, and I was going to jump off onto him, and we were going to get disqualified. Well, he didn't even like it, didn't want to do it, so he rolled on top of the table. He wouldn't move, so I jumped and broke the table in half. Herb comes in screaming and yelling, "Oh, my God, you broke the table, you're fined, and you're fired and everything else." And I'm like, okay, whatever. We start walking out, and I think with Paul Lord, there was something, "That was awesome. I never seen anyone break a table like that. That is great." And all of a sudden, Herb goes, "I was only kidding. You want to bonus, kid?" And I'm like, what the hell, you know? The fact that Paul Lord thought breaking the table was great, also I got a bonus. I wasn't fired anymore. And we show up in, he tells us, "Okay, well, tomorrow we're having a pay-per-view." And this is no lie. All of a sudden, tomorrow we're on a pay-per-view. And he says, "I'm going to make you guys my tag team champions." I'm like, okay. So
yeah, that's, I guess, and yeah, absolutely. So as everybody tonight, also too, let's send out some special prayers for Terry Funk for a quick recovery, from his pneumonia.
Absolutely.
He was at WrestleMania. I got to hang out with Terry, listen to Hillbilly, and man, he looked great. Terry looks as good as I ever saw him. He looks like he's rested and everything. I'm really sorry to hear he's come down with that pneumonia. That's a pretty tough one right there, It
is.
Yeah, I hope he recovers quickly.
Yeah, I do too.
Billy, Bob here. I was wondering if you could just stay on. I got another old friend of yours coming on here shortly, and ask him a couple of questions. This is a gentleman here who probably Owen's probably his greatest idol. I have a caller coming in from Missouri. I believe that Harley Race is on the air.
Wow.
Hey, King Harley.
Welcome to Hart Beat Radio.
Yes, tremendous honor, Harley. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, it's an honor.
Well, when it comes to the Hart family, I have always been a person that liked every one of them, and especially their father.
Yeah, my dad loved Harley like a son. He was had a special spot in his heart for Harley, and I know it meant a great deal to my dad, Harley, after my mother unfortunately passed away, and you flew up here and hung out with Stu for a week or two just to sort of be there for him, and that meant so much to him, and certainly made a great impression on all of us. Just what a great friend you were. So I'm honored that you chose to join us tonight.
Harley, I know Owen looked up to you so much. When he was, I think, elementary school and junior high, you came up several times as the NWA World Champion, and I know Owen loved riding with you. He loved seeing you, and you came up to my dad's house to visit Stu, and then as he got older, he got to spend more time with you, maybe in the dressing room and even some of the road trips, and then later in the WWF when you were the king of the ring there, Owen also got to spend time with you. But I think there were some lighthearted moments and a few pranks here and there, but I know he loved you so much like a father, Harley, and you were a tremendous influence on him.
He was a very good kid, and there isn't anything about you or the rest of your family that I didn't truly care for.
Oh, that's great to hear, Harley.
You're always a huge role model for us, Harley, and you were a tremendous influence on some of the other young guys that started up in Calgary, like Dynamite Kid worshipped you. You're sort of like his ultimate idol, and Davey Boy too. They had the utmost respect for you, and they used to try to walk like you and drive like you, and I think Dynamite tried to drink beer like you, but he couldn't keep up.
He couldn't keep up with Harley, no.
But you were sort of their biggest hero, all those guys, they looked up to you and worshipped you, and as I said before, it's a real honor to have two of the all-time legends on our show tonight, Terry Funk and Harley Race. It doesn't get any better than that.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I have liked the Hart family since day one when I was first up there, and your father was always very, very nice to me and was very good to me overall.
Yeah, he had a great deal of respect for you, Harley. For you came up sort of like him, the hard way. You know, you went through a lot of hell to get in the business, and you paid a hell of a lot of dues, and you were with a lot of the old shooters, and many of which were kind of cronies of my dad's from back in the day. And then my dad had, so much respect for all the, what you brought to the business. You dedicated your whole life to it, and everywhere you went, you were like the consummate professional, whether it was in Minneapolis or St. Louis or later when you had the World Championship, and you always, brought a great deal of honor and respect to that title and all like that, and my dad always used to say it was a shame there wasn't, later on in the 80s, there wasn't more guys like you and the Funks that kind of were upholding the integrity of the world title and all that other, so you guys were sort of guys he had tremendous amount of respect and admiration for.
Well, and likewise for him, from me, your father was a great person, and truthfully, the whole Hart family was very nice people, including you.
That's great to hear, Harley, and I know Owen was very much influenced by you, and you were just a tremendous role model and father figure to him, and it's great that you're on here on what would have been his 50th birthday, and you certainly had a lasting influence on Owen, and we really appreciate that.
I was going to ask you, Harley, about Owen told me something about something he did at a barbecue of yours. Get off track here, but he
I heard something about
Tabasco
sauce or something,
put like
Harley
red hot sauce and something like that. But he told me that you kind of caught him, caught him in the act or something like that. And
I have always enjoyed cooking and different things like that, and then of course I always enjoyed kind of pulling a rib on somebody every now and then, involving all that.
Bruce, growing up in Florida, we saw Harley Race wrestle a million times, and I met him briefly when I was in WCW when he was managing Vader, and he was always just a class act. But boy, I remember in WCW though, when we were in back and we're waiting between tapings, he always had a taser in his hand, and you never knew who was going to get it next, And as soon as you heard someone yell, "Ouch!" you knew Harley was nearby, tasering somebody.
Well,
that's what I
that
heard.
thing always worked real good.
Yeah.
I know with Harley though, when they tasered somebody or something, they usually had it coming though. Like Harley usually did it to guys who were well deserving of that kind of thing.
Well,
thank God Owen didn't have a taser, huh?
Oh, jeez.
I'm just going to say, Harley, I've got a couple of your old friends here on the Hillbilly Jim and Bob Leonard. Bob, we haven't heard from you for a little while. Got King Harley on there. Bob, are you on there?
I'm still on board,
Bob
absolutely. And Harley, it's great to hear your voice again.
Well, same here, my friend.
Yeah, we were just at Cauliflower Alley Club together. I wish we could have spent a little more time than we did, but always great to see you there. And I'll tell you, you're one of our premier members. Great deal of respect for you from every quarter. And it's just wonderful always to talk to you.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, and it's always been a pleasure going back to the Cauliflower Alley and seeing people that I haven't seen, and some of them are just a year apart, but others I haven't seen in a long, long time, and it's always fun.
Well, that's very true. We get to do some great reunions there with people, and golly, I remember I met one guy 40 years since I'd seen him, but was friendly with him 40 years back. Boy, we had a great old reunion, and that's what CAC is all about. Every April when we have our reunions.
Do you still see Larry Hennig, Harley?
Yeah, I talked to Larry not all that long ago, and then I presented him with an honor not long ago at Cauliflower Alley.
I know he had the utmost respect for you, and I remember when I was with Kurt Hennig in Portland back in the 80s, and he had the ultimate respect and reverence for you. He attributed a lot of his success just to you and things I guess Larry told him about you, but he very much worshipped you, so that certainly speaks volumes. So I know these guys like Dynamite and Davey and Owen and Brett, you were sort of like the ultimate icon to them and made a huge influence on them. So, I know you probably know that, but they modeled themselves after you, and you were kind of the guy that they all aspired to be like. So.
Well, everyone you just mentioned was a very nice person themselves, and it was always a pleasure to be in and around with them whenever I could be.
This is Hillbilly Jim here, Harley. I want to say something to you.
Hey,
I've been
Jim.
just laying back here listening to you talk. You know how much I love you. I've told you many times, and I feel a little bit upset. I wish I could have been around 20 or 30 years before I was to have known you for 20 or 30 years, because all you men didn't know this. As great a fantastic athlete as Harley Race has been, and as a great a credit he's been to this wrestling business, he's just that good a man, too. And one of the greatest guys you'd ever want to be around, a real genuine person. And doggone it, I tell you what, I wish we could have a young Harley Race out there today, because I guarantee you there was nobody better in the ring ever that I've ever seen than Harley Race. He could actually take anybody in there that could get in that ring and have a match with him. And I'm a testament to that, because he could have a match with a broomstick if he could take me in there, and all you had to do, fellas, was just let him lead you, because there was no better general in that ring than Harley Race. And let me tell you something, I would just say this, boys, he's probably forgot more than most of these guys that are probably champions now know. I have to tell you that. It's just the way it is. And Harley Race never went over a match. Harley Race never did rehearse a match before it happened. He would call the match in the ring, and you just follow him through it and be there for him. And there wasn't no way you could do but one thing: get over. That's how good this man here is. We're talking right now. And it was a good thing for Owen Hart to admire him. It was a good thing for Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy and all these guys, because let me tell you something, there ain't a better measuring stick ever in this wrestling business, in my opinion, than a Harley Race.
Agreed. I totally agree.
Well, thank you very, very much. I appreciate that.
And no one carried himself outside the ring like Harley Race either, Bruce. No one carried him. The way he carried himself, he always made the NWA proud.
Yeah, that's another thing I'd like to say about Harley. Unlike some of the guys today, is Harley always comported himself like a champion. He everything about him, and the fans saw that, and he really epitomized what a champion was all about. I see some guys today, and not to be denigrating anybody, but guys wearing flip-flops and sweatpants, and they're like WWE champion and stuff. And I remember when Harley came up here, it was always, first class, everything, and if you saw him, you knew that he was somebody, and that's another thing that, Harley always made, the image of the champion look like it should, and
Bruce, add on that too, this is Hillbilly again. It's a shame that this industry, this business that we all love and been proud of, doesn't reach back and take care of the guys like that a little more and look after them a little more and make them more special, because, my God, these are the people that your whole business is founded upon. Harley Race, there it is. Harry Funk, there it is.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't get any better, and I totally agree. I think it's, for me, shameful that they haven't kind of, done more, not just for those guys, but to, perpetuate their memory and their legacy too, because there's a whole generation of those guys who were, the ultimate in wrestling, from Harley and Dory and even Lou Thez. Not to be knocking WWE, but, you never hear about any of those guys, and pisses me off when I hear about some guy who can barely work and is a 18 times champion or something like that.
That's right.
It almost kind of grates on my ears when I hear something like that. A guy who's got 3 holds and is smartened up a bunch of marks, and he's a 19-time world champion, and it's not right.
They could hold the belt 30 times and wouldn't match Harley holding it once.
A quick message just came in on the wire from Abdullah the Butcher and Malika Marshall, quoting Abdullah the Butcher, wishing you happy birthday and many the spirit of Owen Hart. Live on forever. I know wherever you and your dad Stu Hart are, you're probably starting another territory somewhere. Long live Owen Hart. And then Abdullah sends his very best to everyone, especially Harley, Dan Crawford, Bobby Stewart, and Terry Funk. And I'm going to bring on another good friend of ours. Owen was considered him one of his great heroes when he was a young kid, started breaking in the business in Stampede. He's a good friend of Harley's, and I'd like to welcome the great Dan Crawford, one of the top baby faces of Stampede Wrestling. Dan, welcome to Hart Beat Radio.
Well, thank you so much. It's really joining a very elite group of guests that you have tonight. Of course, listening Harley Race, I just saw him recently at the CAC, didn't have a chance to visit, but certainly always look forward to seeing him. And, it takes me back in memory to working with Harley when he had the belt. Something was mentioned earlier, which is so true. I remember wrestling Harley in Red Deer for the world title. And funny enough, as was mentioned earlier, I thought we would sit down and discuss it for 10 or 15 minutes, however he wanted to conduct the match. But I remember Harley looking at me. Harley just looked at me, winked and smiled and says, "I'm sure it'll be fine." And we went out there and went 30 minutes, and I got to tell you, I can't recall the last time I enjoyed dancing so much. It seemed like every move was just perfect, and he made me feel not only confident and comfortable in being in the ring, but I had this sense of almost chemistry. I'd never worked with him before, but the chemistry was there, and again, to just sort of reiterate on what was said earlier, I think Harley. I worked with Dory Funk, I worked with Gene Kiniski, I worked with a lot of the world champions, and God rest his soul, Gene Kiniski was probably the hardest guy I ever worked with in my life, and I would say of all the world champions I worked with, I would say Harley Race was the easiest. It was, as we used the term, it was a night off. It certainly was for me, and so, on that note, I just want to acknowledge Harley and say that he's made an impact on the industry. And it was mentioned earlier about legacy, and that, I've mentioned this before, that if it wasn't for our photographers and our storytellers and people that write books and, they preserve the film and that of what we used to do, we're so fortunate to have the industry and the technology today to be able to preserve it. But, really looking back, you made reference to Owen, and funny enough, I first met Owen, believe it or not, when he was about 4 years old. He came into the dressing room with his dad, Stu, every Friday night, and he'd sit there quietly and listen and watch. And who would have ever guessed that he would have emerged as probably one of the the greats of the WWE. So we talk about the Hart dynasty, and we talk about the Harts and wrestling on a whole, and people like Harley and many of the other greats. What we never talk about a lot, and I've always felt it's a little remiss, are the people that make things happen for us behind the curtain, behind the doors. And, knowing the Hart family as well as I did, I started in '69. I was extremely fortunate, and, of course, knowing Owen and watching him grow up, not only becoming a great worker, but also a great father and a great husband. These are things that also should be mentioned. He was a great dad, and I've seen his children since, and they're all grown up. I've talked to his son, and something, you can just tell what he embedded in his family, and his wife has done such a tribute to him. She set up a fund in his name. They're raising money every year. I mean, it's quite remarkable, the lasting impact that he's had on the community as well as the wrestling world. But there are other people that should be mentioned in your program, and one that I feel that we're remiss in not mentioning enough is because, as the old saying goes, behind every great man is a great woman. And usually a great man has a great woman behind him. And in the case of Stu Hart, Helen Hart, who I got to know quite well, and many wrestlers really didn't because of not living here, I can tell you that she was another person that could be a subject matter for a program. I mean, grace, elegance, class, tremendous person, and a lot of great stories about Helen, too. So I hope someday this program will look in depth into the people who are surrounding the industry and behind the curtains and the doors, if you will. And Helen is one that I just couldn't resist mentioning the fact that she was such a gracious person.
Your mother was every bit the person that he just described. She was a fantastic woman, and your dad.
I had the opportunity. They both were terrific, and it was a real privilege for me. Something I didn't see coming, but towards the end of both their lives, I had the opportunity to take them out for dinner, and we had dinner at the Palliser Hotel here in Calgary, and we had an afternoon. And Helen not only displayed class and elegance, but she was an extremely intelligent individual who really, I think, had great advice for Stu. I think they must have consulted on a lot of decisions, which I'm sure, Stu was also misread. A lot of people misinterpreted him. But, he had a taste for fine things, whether it was chandeliers or expensive rugs, or he was a great cook in the kitchen. I mean, a lot of people didn't notice about him. And I used to watch Owen, who would sit on his knee, and you could see there were two, whenever I'd go to Stu's house and talk to him about matches and what have you, the house cats would all sort of gather around Stu. They would gravitate to Stu, and little Owen would go over and sit on his knee. And I watched Stu many times with a coat hanger. He would stroke the cats' bellies, and little Owen would sit there with a big smile on his face as if he knew this was all going to happen, or he'd seen it 100 times before. So, it's funny, sometimes you're sitting watching something, you don't realize how important it becomes later in your life, and I have some great memories of that. But I just wanted to mention Helen, because anybody who had the privilege like I did, I felt like I got to know her to some degree, and it was a real privilege knowing her as well. So I'd like your listeners to be aware of the fact that behind Stu, a great woman.
I think you and Harley are among the very few who ever actually met Helen in person, though. Most of the wrestlers used to just hear her on the phone, and I remember, I think it was Gil Hayes or somebody once said that he was wondering if there actually was such a person as Helen, or if it was Stu impersonating her.
Yeah.
And it was none of the boys ever saw her. She was never at the matches or anything like that. It was always
Bruce,
on the phone.
You were kind enough to invite me over there for dinner. And from then on, she invited me over every Sunday. And she wasn't just a great mother and a part of Stu's team. She knew the business too, and she would talk about stuff and go over what went on TV and all the other stuff. And some people, they say women don't know anything about wrestling; they're just fans of the men. But she knew every aspect of the business. And besides that, she would. When she wasn't talking, to me about how's it going and everything and how's Stampede, she would ask, "What books did you read recently?" And I remember I told her I read Bonfire of the Vans. She goes, "Oh, Brett's reading that book. Is it any good?" And she really was, she'd make you feel so welcome and so good, and she just knew every aspect of the business. It was incredible.
Yeah, I think she called a lot of the finishes, as Ross would remember, and a lot of people didn't realize that.
Stu, I remember Stu would always say, "What's getting up to now, right?"
Young man, you had two great people that brought you up, both your mother and your father.
Yes. Yeah, I certainly appreciate that, and that's true.
And Bruce, everyone can imitate Stu's voice, you know that, but no one ever says a bad word about the man. You ever notice that?
Yeah, that's probably the ultimate compliment, I guess,
90% of them wouldn't say anything bad because they wouldn't want to get their butt kicked.
No. That's right. You're right about that, Harley.
I think if they had said anything bad about Stu in front of Harley, they would have got their asses kicked by him, too. So.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if I can dive in here with a story that I told a few days ago on Hart Beat Radio about Stu. We were at Cauliflower Alley Club together in 2002, we had a big room for displaying photographs, memorabilia, and just for people to mix and mingle. And I remember Bruce bringing Stu into the room in a wheelchair. And it was quite amazing to just stand back and watch. The entire room converged on Stu. They all wanted to shake his hand, speak with him, and I thought it spoke so loudly about the universal respect that he was held in. Harley, I believe you were in the room at the time, and you were one of the first ones to get Stu. And, old friends of his like Angelo Sabaldi, whom he hadn't seen in 40 years. Just everybody converged. They all wanted to shake his hand, say hello, and what a mark of respect. I have never since a display of affection and respect like that for one single person.
I think Harley was the first guy to get to Stu, and but I think Stu had tears in his eyes. He had seen, and was accorded that respect by people like Harley and all those other guys, so I know it meant a deal to him.
If I could just interject here for a moment, I have a suggestion that just came to mind. This year we had an experience at CAC, which was a little unexpected to the degree of success that we enjoyed. I think everyone that was there would agree. Sadly, we're seeing Nick Bockwinkel in decline, and it's always tragic when we see anybody, a friend or a person of high status. It doesn't matter who they are. It's always sad to see that, these type of things happen. But there was a very positive outcome at CAC this year that I thought was worth mentioning. His jacket was of such value, obviously, to so many people and the impact he has had on the industry that we were able to raise $5,000 auctioning off. And I was just wondering, as planting a seed, since Bob Leonard's on and Harley's on and Bruce, you're there, is that I wonder if we could find something of Stu's that was maybe a part of his wrestling career, either a large picture, a portrait, or something like that. And I would recommend that we send that to CAC next year. I mean, the audience was 750 people. Whenever you have an audience that big, there's obviously going to be desire for this type of thing. And I think Stu, being such the icon of the industry, that this would certainly go a long way in attracting a lot of people that could own something of Stu. So I'd like to make the suggestion that maybe Bruce or family members try to find something of Stu's that's recognizable, either a huge picture of him or something, and send that along next year.
If I can add to what Dan has just said there, auctioning off Nick's ring jacket raised $5,000. That money goes directly and 100% into CAC's benevolent fund, and that is the fund that we use to financially support wrestlers, ex-wrestlers who are down on their luck, not through their own actions, but for health reasons, that kind of thing. We stand ready to help them as much as we can, and that type of auction, which I might add was Dan Croppett's brainchild this year. If we could institute that as a regular thing, that would be great, not only in terms of the benevolent fund, but really in honoring the person who that particular thing belonged to.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible idea. I'll get with Ross and perhaps Brett and Keith and whoever and see if there's some, I'm sure there must be some kind of something of Stu's that would...
we could auction off one of your kids.
Yeah. I have another caller coming in, another one of our old friends from Stampede Wrestling. He's a friend of all the people on the panel, Frank Cullen, and he wrestled as Robbie Stewart. Welcome to Hart Beat Radio.
Hi, good evening, guys.
Hi, Robbie. Nice of you to come on, and a lot of the guys on here, so I'll let you jump in.
Absolutely, and it's great to hear them talk, and I couldn't help but laugh there at Dan's suggestion about Sonia Stewart. All I could think about was sending down an old Cadillac with a flat tire, maybe.
Oh. Yeah. Only one flat tire?
And then when the lucky
not just one flat tire, 4 flat tires. You know.
When the lucky winner takes it home, and he opens the trunk and 4 Siamese cats jump out.
Yeah.
Well, that probably happened too.
But you know, I was with Stampede Wrestling back in the 80s. I came from Scotland. I actually back living in Calgary now. I actually live in Cochrane. I think I'm not too far from that. I'm not sure. I remember Owen being at school at the time, and you know, and even then you could see when he used to come and train with us in the ring that he was he very much liked the European style of wrestling, and you know, and obviously Dynamite was there, myself was there, Davey Boy, and Brett had pretty much adopted that European style too, and you could see that Owen just had so much natural ability, and everything you showed him, you only had to show him once, and he could pretty much get it, and then he would take it and he would almost amplify the move and make it his own. He was really, really special right from the very beginning when he was still at school. Bruce, I know you saw that in him yourself, and you yourself knew that he was going to be very special, right?
Yeah, very much so. And beyond that, what really set him apart is he had a really great sense of how to conduct himself outside of the ring too. You know, he was a consummate professional, and he respected the fans and respected the business, you know, and upheld all of that, you know, and as Dan was saying, he was also a great father and a great role model too. So he was a really special person.
And his rookie year, those matches against the Vietnam Express were unbelievable. Those Vietnam Express matches for a rookie, oh my God! There's guys that wrestled 10 years that didn't have matches like that. Those things were incredible.
Absolutely. But what you're going to remember is when Owen got in the ring for the first time, say as a pro at 16, he already had about 6 or 7 years under his belt, because he used to be sitting at ringside every night in, night out, and he would be in the ring at every opportunity. So although he was a rookie at 16, 17, he had been around it since he could almost see these grits, right?
Yeah, as Hillbilly was saying, he was almost like an old soul. You know, he had this kind of maturity that, you know, belied his years, you know. He seemed to...
Absolutely. You know, every now and again, the business turns up, every few decades, the business turns up a real natural. And Owen wasn't only a natural-born wrestler, but he also looked like the consummate professional. His whole body shape, his whole build, he was just built to wrestle almost. His brain and his physical appearance, he was just built to wrestle. I remember when he came to the UK, Brian Dixon from All Star said, "Okay, Frank," or Robbie Stewart or someone here, "Frank, you're the one that knows him best. You're going to wrestle with him." I said, "You know what? I don't think I could do Owen justice." I said, "I know of another opponent, a guy called Danny Collins in the UK. And we put him on with Danny Collins, and I have to tell you that I've never seen so many wrestlers outside of the dressing room applauding a match before. Such was such glee and joy that they brought to the crowd, and just all the really technical and innovative stuff that Owen was capable of. It was just, Britain had never seen anything like it before. It was awesome to watch.
Yeah, Owen was truly an international star. Like he loved the European style. You know, I patterned some of his work along Bruce and Keith and Brett, but he also was very much influenced by Dynamite and Davey. And I think you, Frank, when you were wrestling here in the 80s, because you had some great matches as well. You know, and then from years earlier, maybe watching, you know, guys like Dan Crawford and Leo Burke, you know, and Owen just had so many different influences, and then a lot of the Japanese stars as well. You know,
and Harley
like
and Terry.
And Tiger Mask and Harley and Terry Funk and Dory Funk. And Owen was able to get over in all these different places. He had tremendous matches in Japan. He could be a high flyer. He could be a technical wrestler. He had great matches in Germany where he worked for Otto Bonds or for Max Crabtree or Brian Dixon, and on a lot of the independents for Stampede, and then did very well with WWE. You know, he truly had an international style, and he could work with just about anybody and get anybody else over, and he was very unselfish in the ring. You know, it was never about how to get himself over, but how to get his opponent over, and that's what I always liked about Owen.
Sounds like you're describing me.
Very much, yeah. Well, exactly, Harley.
Just about to say that, Harley.
And that's why.
Owen's, Ross, you talk about Owen's international flavor.
Yeah, that's actually what they used to all say about Harley. You know, he was one of those guys that could work with a broomstick and make it look like a world champion. You know,
right?
To wrestle a chair, right?
Yeah, and that's why Harley was such a strong influence on Owen.
You were also talking about Owen, though, and his style. Wasn't he like one of the first North American wrestlers ever to hold the junior title over in Japan?
I think
one
so.
Of the first foreign wrestlers, anyway.
I think he sort of followed in the footsteps of Dynamite and then.
Yeah, but Dynamite from
Davey
England, he had the English style. You know, that's what I'm saying. I think Owen's the first North American ever to hold that title. You know, it was either the Japanese boys or the British wrestlers that would always get the strap, and I think he was the first one.
The only ones before Owen who held the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title were Dynamite and Mark Rocco, who wrestled with Black Tiger, and I think Owen was the first
friend of
North American.
Frank's too.
Yeah.
So many ding-dong matches with Rollerball Rocco, yeah. He was a great guy, and he actually wrestled Owen, too. Just before Mark retired from the business, he wrestled Owen in England, and Mark would tell you that was one of his best matches, and they don't come any tougher and better than Mark Rocco in Britain.
No.
The good thing about what Owen did was when he displayed his European style is, for example, when North American guys, or especially the guys of today, if you like, I wrestled, just before I finished in the business, I wrestled Tatanka in Aberdeen, Scotland, and he spent 45 minutes telling me what he was going to do. And I have to say, I took 3.5 seconds to forget everything he had just told me. And I went in the ring, and because he wasn't doing what he does, he was like a fish out of water, you know, and they had no, ad-lib, they had no sense of doing another, you know, they just couldn't do it without a script almost. It's unbelievable. But Owen, on the other hand, would come to Britain, find a guy that he'd never met before, somebody he'd never heard of, and he would give them one hell of a match because he just knew how to go in there and express himself, and he knew what was the right thing to do at the right time. Not many could do that nowadays.
Hey, guys, this is Hillbilly. You made me think of something, guys. One night, we were over at the University of Chattanooga, Tennessee. I think it was in Chattanooga down the States here. And we got there earlier, and, you know, they had a pretty formidable wrestling team there. As a matter of fact, Pistol Pez Watley was on that team, right? One of those teams down there. And we got there early one evening, guys, and we got off in the one of the gyms there, and they had the mats in. And I swear this was great. Pez was working for us then, too. Pez and Owen got in there on the mat, and they were going at it, shooting style, man. It was great. I mean, they were right down on the mat, and they were really getting into it, man. I'd never seen Owen do that. I wasn't aware Owen was that good on the mat like that, but he was right in there with Pez, and it was pretty doggone impressive. So to say what all you guys are saying, I can see how it all ties together, that European style, but he just loved anything to do with getting on the mat, being in the ring. He just seemed to be one of those kind of kids that had just enough of it where he could do a little bit of all of it, you know.
Oh, yeah, he had a pretty legitimate amateur pedigree on. He was like national collegiate champion up here, and a lot of people don't even know that, but he was probably the best of the 12 kids in amateur, you know. He was a real...
I wonder if you can confirm, Bruce, if the story's true that when the Owen's Olympic wrestling coach came from the school to beg Stu not to let Owen proceed into pro wrestling just yet because he still had a foreseeable future as an amateur ahead of him, and Stu was all in.
They were wanting him to stay in university and groom him for the '88 Olympics, and I think it was '86 that Owen started, and I think my dad was torn between the two because he was a huge amateur wrestling fan too and all, but I think business wasn't that good at the time, so Stu was kind of seeing Owen as an attraction too. So I think
the gym teacher was doing good with Stu until he had Stu's ear and his undivided attention until the gym teacher said he doesn't want to go into that pro wrestling crap. And then I think Stu took bread and the smoke was coming out.
I think Stu stretched the guy himself at
That's
that
what
point.
I heard, The Olympic coach down in the gym and stretched him.
Yeah.
Hey, but you know, guys, what I was saying a while ago about, and I mentioned that a while ago about Harley, he could have a race, he could have a match with a, with a broomstick. because he did down here in the South. He had 2 or 3 matches with a guy, George Goulas, down here who couldn't work very well, and Harley made him look like a world champion. You know, and here's the thing that gets me, and that was the thing that would get me in my matches, because I was just doing a gimmick all the time, and that's all I wanted to do. That's all my job was, and I loved it. But these guys would sit in there and go through these damn matches. It'd be 30 and 40 minutes. Harley Race, I swear to you, he would never do that. He would never. You'd never see Harley Race going to or guys of that caliber, Jack Briscoe, Harley Race, even Flair in those days. They would never go to the ring and practice. I mean, Harley would say, "We'll ring," and that makes the best. That makes the best match after all, because, like my brother said a while ago, once the bell rings, you forget half of that shit anyway.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes
I remember Owen was a lot like that too. He kind of had learned at the heels of Dory and Terry and Harley, and he was like that. He was always disdainful of the script, and I remember guys, especially, I don't know why it was, but a lot of the Mexican guys used to come up and they'd have like 20 pages of. Owen always used to tell them, "Well, play it by ear," is what he used to call it. But Owen was a lot like Harley and Terry in that respect. You know, he just liked to improvise and didn't like to be a slave to a script.
You know, Bruce. One time when I was working for All Japan, I remember Stan Hansen started going over his match with Davey Boy Smith, and Stan's telling him everything he wants to do, and Davey said, "Well, are we really going to do any of this stuff?" And Stan's like, "Well, what the hell do you mean?" Davey's like, "Well, last time I wrestled, you went over the stuff, and all you did is beat the crap out of me, so what do we need to talk about?"
Hey, this is Hillbilly Jim. We were in, I believe it was St. Louis one night, right? And the late, great Kurt Hennig, you remember Kurt, Mr. Perfect, came, but he was going to wrestle with Harley. Harley probably remember. Harley came in with those blue boots like he always is. He's put his blue boots. He's got a cigarette in his mouth, right? Kurt comes in. He says, "Hey, we're working together tonight." Yeah, and I'm like, "Well, this is going to be great because, Kurt can work his ass off too." Kurt says, "We're going to do all this. We're going to do all this. We're going to do all this." And then he says, and then at the end he says, "I'm going to get up on the top and I'm going to come off the top on you." And Harley just kept tying up his boots and smoking that cigarette. He said, "Yeah." He said, "You do that and I'll move."
Yeah.
And I said, "That's great, good stuff,
Owen was pretty like Kurt in many ways. I think they were natural born wrestlers, and I could see some of Kurt Hennig and Owen Hart, the way he wrestled.
Oh yeah. That's that second generation stuff, where he really got it,
Absolutely.
Although I might add, George Goulas was second generation, so it doesn't always hold true.
Please.
George Goulas' daddy was only a promoter.
When I wrestled in Memphis, Hillbilly, this is Tom again. When I wrestled in Memphis, they used to say George Goulas, his father when he was a promoter, how he counted the money? He'd throw her up in the air. Whatever stuck to the ceiling, the boys got. Whatever landed on the floor, George Goulas got. Yeah.
That's right.
And if it came with your car, you left in the bus,
He was the guy that used to say, "Daddy goes down. Daddy goes down. Daddy says go down," or something.
Yeah,
like that.
That's right. That was the deal, man.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That was his famous "Daddy says go down." Did you ever work with him, Harley?
Sure he did. Harley took him to. Hey, Harley would do 1 hour Broadways with him. And Harley would lead him around and make George Goulas look like he was the king of the ring. That's how great Harley Race is. I mean, really.
If anyone could do that, it could be Harley.
Our Broadways.
The utmost respect for Harley, but I have even more now after that.
I saw him do it one time with my own eyes, and they said he did it 2 or 3 times around the territory with him. Harley Race could have beat him in 6 seconds, okay? Harley Race could have pinned him before the bell even rang in the dressing room, right? But it was so funny to watch Harley work, and Harley would just take bumps and fly around, and he would he just made it. George would just stand in the middle of the ring, and Harley would just lead him around like you'd lead a little puppy around.
Yeah. Just ask Harley about when we were down in I think it was in Billings, and we didn't have a ring. And that's telling that story.
That just reinforces what a ultimate consummate professional Harley was. But we had one of those typical Stampede Wrestling screw-ups where I think it was my brother Wayne. We were supposed to be in Billings, but Wayne the ring to Butte, which is 150 miles the other direction or something, and we had this big card down there. Harley was the world champion, and super card of the year down there in Billings, and all the boys were about ready to pack up and go home, and Harley says, to hell with that, tell the crowd to stay, and he went out there and worked. I can't remember if it was with Jake Roberts or Junkyard Dog or one of those guys, but he worked on the damn hardwood floor in this Shrine Auditorium down in Billings, and saved the show. And he was the world champion, the biggest star in the business at the time, but it gives you some idea of what a professional he was, and I couldn't imagine.
Hell, I forgot all about that. Now that you mentioned it, I remember it now.
You forgot about it too, huh?
Yeah. Rest of these guys can't leave the house without texting.
Yeah. No. I remember Harley taking the big high backdrops on that
oh my God,
basketball court or whatever, and saved the show, people were all going crazy, and I know it just sort of further enhanced Stu's respect for Harley when he kind of rallied the troops and said nobody's leaving. If I could go out there and do it, then you guys all get your ass in the ring too, and they all did too, So.
Hey, but you know what, Bruce? What would have been even better if you could see what Harley used to do to Junkyard Dog. Junkyard Dog was the most ticklish guy in the whole universe. Harley Race would put them big old giant fingers up there and come towards JYD, and JYD would start sweating. Oh, Harley, please, please, please. I saw him back him up, his big 300-pound chocolate ass. He'd back him up into a little bitty locker. Junkyard Dog would run into the locker, a little one that you put books in, trying to get away from Harley. I guarantee you that would be better than watching a match.
Well, Harley had a hell of a grip too. Harley was like,
it was great, man.
He had break pliers with his hands, Harley,
Yeah.
JYD told me Stu only called him by one name. What are you doing tonight, you big bastard? Are you going to work tonight, you big bastard, or what are you doing, you big bastard? He said, all you ever called him was a big bastard.
Those were the days, guys. Those were the days.
It was absolutely great being able to talk with you all once again, and it was great being able to talk with you all.
Yeah. Thanks for your memories about Owen and the family, Harley.
It was great talking to you too, Harley, and I greatly appreciate all the nice things you said, and you've been an incredible friend and role model for us, so we owe you, and thank you very much.
There ain't many like that, and of course, they have Terry Funk on here earlier, and all you guys as well. It's just this is the kind of stuff Owen would have liked. He really would have.
Yeah, I'm sure somewhere up above Owen's smiling, and Stu's, chomping at the bit to stretch somebody. So
yeah,
he's just sitting there wishing he could pull the plug while we're all talking,
Yeah, you bet.
Hey, once again, I hope I don't get off on that cloud.
Oh, nine.
Hey, maybe he'll be like you did. He'll smack me. Don't tell your mother I get you a Dairy Queen. That's one of my favorite ones, where he smacked one of the kids away from the table, and Helen was that way from the table, and when we told the kid was crying, he said, "Don't tell your mother I take you and get you a Dairy Queen." Hey, I believe a lot of those Stu Hart stories are just kind of made up and embellished, but you know what? That's what makes it even better. Everybody just loves Stu so much, man. I mean, he's imitated probably more than anybody in the whole entire wrestling business, if you put them all together at once.
I know the one that Stu hated the worst was the one about Stu supposedly invited somebody up for Sunday dinner, and then supposedly one of the cats or dogs or whatever.
I think it's the famous Adrian Street story. Gama Singh told me about that.
There's literally about 100 guys that claim they were the recipients of those eggs that were flipped after Stu scooped the cat shit or dog or whatever.
The kitchen would have to be bigger than the one in the palace.
Stu used to be indignant, and I remember this guy named Gil Hayes claimed that he was right there, and Stu two went ballistic, and then you never have at my house for fucking Sunday dinner, kill you, son of a bitch.
You and Ross and everyone knows I had many dinners over at your house on Sunday, and it was kept a secret because a lot of the boys would be jealous and everything else. But your family was very good to me, and I never had anything but a great dinner. But I did remember one more damn thing about Owen. I remember he had this one cat that would scratch the shit out of you, and he kept throwing this damn cat on my leg, and that thing would not get the hell off my leg, and it was just scratching the hell out of me. And he thought it was the funniest damn thing on earth.
I think the cat was called Heathcliff.
that might have been it. But man, that thing. And I remember Bruce keeps going, "What's wrong, Tom? What's wrong?" I'm like, "This cat." He goes, "Oh, it's a nice cat. Just pet it." I go, "I don't even want to go near it." It was, "Oh, just pet it. It'll be nice." And damn thing would stop scratching the shit out of me.
Before he threw it at you too, though.
You know how they always say, the psychiatrists, they say that you can tell if a kid's going to be a serial killer if he bedwets and does stuffed animals. You can tell he was going to be a serial ripper.
Yeah.
This could be a good time to bring Smith on the show, huh?
It's 300 cats, and the meanest one had to be on my leg.
Absolutely. Hey, you know, anytime you got a chance to rib Owen, you would take advantage of it.
But Hillbilly, you know how you can verify an Owen Hart signature, don't you? Yours was usually next to it, and you wrote all kinds of stuff, like you trying to ask the girl for a date or all kinds of other crap underneath it. You didn't even write.
Oh, he would sabotage anything you had going. It didn't matter what it was, and he had a way for any occasion he could pull a saboteur. He was like a WWE terrorist, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Put a magic marker in his hand, and your photo is done.
Oh, he would do that to me all the time. I told you earlier. Anytime I'd sign somebody's autograph, he'd grab it and right on top of the guy's autograph said, "I love you, Hillbilly Jim," on the bottom of it. So these guys are looking at me kind of funny, like, "What's wrong with Hillbilly Jim here? Oh my God, is he that way?" You know. And I said, "Owen, would you please? I'm begging you, stop it." If you turned your head for a minute, he'd do it again, Bruce. I promise you.
And now you can verify that's the Owen Hart signature. There's no doubt, you know.
You're doggone right. If it's true that you can't take nothing with you when you leave this earth but what you give away, then Owen Hart left here very wealthy, because everybody has a high esteem of him, and we all remember him. And boy, I tell you what, I miss him a lot. And I smile every time I think about that, brother. We know how it ended. We didn't want it to be that way. But let me tell you something. Just look at all this wonderful happiness that he's brought, all this collection of guys together. There have been some guys on this show tonight, brother, that have been in this business so many years. We talk about Harley Race and the great, you talk about Terry Funk. You look at there. I mean, those are two of the biggest icons this business ever produced. They feel the same thing that you feel, brother. So if you've got a passion for something and you want to be in this business, give it your best. Do everything that you can, and don't let nobody deter you. Do it every day, and do it for yourself, and keep a good attitude. That's the way Owen Hart lived his life. He laid it on the line every day, and listen, we're celebrating his life tonight.
Yeah,
definitely.
I agree, and couldn't have put it better, Jim. I'm going to wind down now, I guess. I'd just like to once again thank each and every one of you guys. It was very touching, and it was a great honor and a great thrill for me to be able to have all you guys on, and you guys all brought a lot of great memories back, and it meant a lot to all of us. So thank you very much.
May Owen's memories live forever. Thanks so much.